What's up everyone, we're back once again for what is perhaps our second to last Gundam Evolution patch notes overview, this time taking a look at Season 6. Now some of this information has been revealed already, but we're going to go ahead and take a look at all the new notes, as well as a quick look at our new suit, Zeta Gundam. So unfortunately, with no dev stream to go along with the season release this time around, we are a little in the dark of how Zeta Gundam functions. We don't know its exact HP values, its ammo counts, or what the cooldowns of any of its abilities are, but we do have a bit of an overview of how they work. We do know the main weapon is a beam rifle, similar to that of Gundam, and based on the trailer, it looked like it probably had around 7 shots, although of course that's always up to change. It also seems to have a shield that you activate by doing the aim down the sight subfire option, but it's also active when you're transformed in that flight mode, which of course is kind of one of the big things of Zeta Gundam, matching up with Ashimar and Methis as another flying suit. You do have a shield in front, but you also have while that shield is active, you can ram into enemies to deal what sounds like a small amount of damage there, and it also counts as a melee attack, so it will go through shields. They did say that if the shield breaks, which we don't know the value of, while you're in that flight mode, you will immediately get knocked out of flight mode. So while that shield will help you be safer while you're flying in the air, it does mean you could potentially get knocked out of that earlier than you would be as Ashimar or Methis. The other active ability is Hyper Mega Launcher, which appears to be a forward-facing, high-damage beam. It is affected by the passive ability Biosensor, along with Beam Rifle, which is an ability where as you deal damage, you fill up a gauge, which increases the Biosensor charge, which then allows you to deal even more damage while Biosensor is charged up. Finally, for the G maneuver, Zeta Gundam has Beam Confuse, which seems to function similarly to Gundam's G maneuver, where Zeta Gundam will throw out its beam saber, then after a period of time, shoot it, causing it to explode and deal area damage. Unlike Gundam's G maneuver though, it does seem to stun opponents, and it's unknown if enemies can shoot the beam saber to stop it from going off. Now we're going to hop right into the balance adjustments. Before we get into the individual suits, they did have an overall change here for all mobile suits, where all G maneuvers will now charge a little bit faster passively as time passes during the match. Now they say they're doing this because in the current match environment and duration, it is difficult to fill the G maneuver meter. I don't really agree with that. I guess they're saying, some matches are ending so fast, or some rounds are ending so fast that people aren't even charging their ults. I personally haven't seen that much. I mean, it does happen occasionally, but at that point, it's usually just because the enemy team charged their ult so fast, they kind of steamrolled you before you had a chance to charge them yourself. And I don't think this will really affect that. And in general, I don't think we really needed more G maneuvers. I think they're kind of at a healthy level where they're at right now. So a little bit of weird change. It's not a huge difference, but personally, I'm not really sure why they decided to do this. But first up for the individual suits is Gundam Exia. Now there's a lot of changes coming in here. First off, a relatively big nerf. They're making Exia's hitbox larger by around 10%. That means that everything aside from, I guess, Guntank, who doesn't have to aim, will have an easier time hitting Exia now as it's flipping around all over the place. To compensate for that, the GN Sword Russian Slash cooldown is going down by 1 second, but they're also nerfing it where you can't hold the charges long. Now, a lot of the times you don't want to hold it anyways. As soon as you get the full charge, you just want to let it rip and hit someone. But it did mean you could kind of slowly creep your way around a corner while it's at that full charge and see who's there before letting it go. And now you have a little bit less time before you have to commit to that. So that is a nerf there, at least on that part of the change. But the cooldown reduction in general is pretty nice. So I think that will be nice there. Quick Step also getting a 2-second nerf. Pretty nice, but since that does have a very long cooldown in the first place, you still probably won't be getting off more than 1 in a single fight. So it does mean you can kind of do your combo, get out with Quick Step, and then you'll have, less time before you have to go back in and have that available. But I think the problem with that is that Exia often takes damage as you're committing to a fight. So even if you're getting Quick Step back more quickly, you still might have to wait just as long to kind of get your passive regen or get to a health pack. So not sure how much of an impact that will have, but it is a buff obviously. And then they're also reducing the cooldown on GN Sword and Short Blade, rotating slash from 5 seconds to 4 seconds. Also not really sure how to feel about that one because, usually it's comboed with the Russian Slash. And if you don't have Russian Slash up, it's kind of difficult to get. Usually, with Exia, your goal is you get in with your combo, you get that kill, and then you kind of get out. Maybe do some poking damage with your daggers. You kind of want to wait until your combo's ready again, then you go in again. So even though that's shorter, I don't know if it's really going to matter that much. I think the Russian slash cooldown is probably a bit more. There are some times where you get in with your combo and you can't quite finish someone off. I mean, if they're a shield suit, your daggers can't poke them down because I got the shield up after that. So it can help there. I don't think it's really a huge change. But overall, I think these are kind of tough to say. Exia, I feel, has had... it's struggled a lot more than the other, flanker type suits because the 800 HP combined with, no invincibility like Z2R, and everyone else like Barb has more HP and has more vertical mobility. So I feel like Exia's kind of been in a rough spot, and by far the most annoying part of them when I'm fighting them personally is the fact that they're hard to hit. So I can understand the rationale of increasing the hitbox, but I just feel like Exia kind of struggles with how easily they can be focused down by good players. So I think at higher level this may hurt Exia. At middle level, not so sure, because they will be getting shot more by non-gun tank things, and your combo is still roughly the same. You can just do it more often. So we'll have to see. Exia is at its most fun when you can use its abilities. I think most people would agree with that. The daggers are kind of whatever. It can be kind of fun to snipe with them a bit, but since they changed those numbers, you can't even do that as hard anymore. So this could make it more fun. You can get in and out more frequently, more often. But I think overall it might be a bit of a nerf, but we'll have to see how that plays out. Speaking of flankers, up next we have Zaku Ranged Z2R, also getting the hitbox increase by roughly 10%. And in exchange for that, Smoke Discharger is getting its cooldown lowered from 13 seconds to 11 seconds. So I don't know about this one. Z2R, I feel, isn't going to suffer from the hitbox increase as much as Exia, because Zaku Ranged thing is kind of that you sneak up on people. You're either going directly at them, or you're coming at them from, an angle they're not looking at. And if you're coming directly at them, I feel like most people, it wasn't necessarily hard to hit them in that case. It's just the fact that their damage is so overwhelming that unless you're really on the ball, they're going to kill you first and then get out. And then if they're coming at you from a flank, then usually you don't even have a chance to shoot them anyways. So I don't really feel like Zaku Ranged thing was necessarily that they're as hard to hit, while they definitely are. I don't think it's that as much of a thing with compared to Exia. But I think their biggest strength is the fact they get you really fast, either kill you before you have time to fire back, or just kill you before you even realize they're attacking you at all from some angle you can't see, and then they smoke and get out. And now they can do that more often, because smoke is going to be out more often. They get out, they get that health back, they come back in, they might even have smoke ready already. So I don't really like this change. It could be worse for Z2R than I realize. Personally, I think Zaku Ranged is insanely strong in the current state, especially in the right hand, so I don't want to buff them in any way. And I think Smoke Discharger is a big part of that strength, the fact that it can kind of be free to get out with if you're really good at timing that. So I think this is going to it's going to make them stronger at higher level, but I'll be happy to be proven wrong. We'll have to see how it goes, and if that extra hitbox size does mean they'll get burned down more quickly, maybe it won't be as big a deal as I thought. Alright, next up we have my boy Gundam, getting a small buff. They say they feel like the main weapon is in a good spot right now, so they decide to give a buff to Super Napalm. After all this time, I'm always talking about how that's a weak part of Gundam's kit, and the buff they decided to give it was given an extra 200 HP. So, at first I saw this and I was like, really? That's all you're doing? Super Napalm is going to stay the same as it always has, but it's just harder to kill? But I think that's not actually a bad change. Super Napalm is a weak G maneuver, but I think if it is able to detonate, it's not bad. It's not like completely terrible. It's just really, if it gets shot and doesn't detonate, then it's like, okay, I just used my G maneuver for basically nothing. I bought a little bit of a distraction. So I think the durability increase on that is actually pretty okay. The only other big buff that I was kind of thinking for it would be to make it similar to, I guess, Diva's ult in Overwatch, where the explosion doesn't do damage to yourself anymore. Because there's another thing with Gundam's Juniors, you throw it in on a big fight on the point, and then you can't push on top of it because it's going to blow you up as well. I always feel like that kind of stunk, but maybe that'd actually be too strong. That'd probably be a better buff for it than what they gave it here, so I don't know. This is probably fine. I like that they've finally done something for it. Not as big as maybe I hoped, but I think overall it's a decent change for that G maneuver. Next up is a rarity to the patch notes. Unicorn Gundam, rarely showing up on these despite being pretty strong for the game's duration, but finally getting a bit of a change here since the last change, which was adding that passive armor to the passive healing ability. So now both of your armor abilities, or the healing and armor abilities, are going to get a change where their effective range is going from 1400 to 1800 on both of them, and then the total repair amount per second on the passive is going down from 12.5 to 10, and then the total armor gained from the active Psycho Field armor ability is going from 300 to 250. So these are kind of quality of life changes. You know, it makes it easier to play in that support role, but it does mean that when you are actually supporting your allies with those armor abilities, and yourself actually, because this does affect Unicorn's own buffing ability for themselves, they are going to be weaker now. So I'm not actually, I feel like these are nerfs. I do like the increased range, but something you got to keep in mind is even though the range is bigger, it still is going to be affected by line of sight. And that's kind of, in my opinion, been the bigger thing for Unicorn a lot of times than necessarily just the range in general. It's the fact that any sort of wall that your teammates are hiding behind interrupts your ability to give them that armor and those heals. So I don't think this is a bad change, though, even though I do think it's a little bit of a net negative for Unicorn. The kind of heal ball comp has been nerfed a little bit since the release of Susanowo, since he has so much piercing damage that when everyone kind of groups up like that, he can kind of punish him for it. But I still think it's very strong, and not every team is running a Susan as well. So I think a slight nerf to that is okay in exchange for these quality of life changes, but I do think in the end it is a little bit of a nerf. Coming up next on the list, we have Pale Rider, who's obviously been a bit of a mainstay for me with all of this play in the Crosshair Invitational League. I've been playing a lot of Pale Rider lately, and I think a lot of people know that Pale Rider is very strong, so I have to see what the changes are here. One might expect a nerf, and that is what we're starting with. Damage going down from 58 to 55, but in exchange it's getting 4 more shots in the mag, meaning that your total damage, if you land all your shots, will be up, actually, from before. The spread is getting tightened, and both while just aim down the sight and I believe aim down the sight while moving. I think all of these changes are for while you're using the sub action, since they mention at the top, although it doesn't mention actual notes here. And the maximum shot spread is going down from 7 to 2. So Pale Rider is going to be a lot more of a sniper, I guess. Now you're going to have a lot more accurate fire. I mean, that's always been kind of the main playstyle for Pale Rider, is aim down the sights play. You don't want to be hip firing too much unless someone gets right on top and you're just trying to get out of it. But that overall seems like a buff, even with the 3 damage reduction there, but we're not done yet. Hades is getting also buffed, going from 9200 to activate to 8200. This, to me, reminds me a lot of the change they did to turn A, where they said, hey, we nerfed turn A in a way, let's make it easier to charge the ult. While they didn't really adjust turn A's damage, they just lowered the HP here, and while here they are actually lowering Pale Rider's damage, I think everything else is going to make it more of a buff, so I don't think the Hades buff was needed here at all. I think we're going to find out that Pale Riders are charging Hades fast than before. I don't think this is an equalizing change at all, so I'm probably going to see more Hades, which I don't think was needed. And then the other changes at the bottom are basically those same changes are happening to the magazine size and everything while you're in Hades, but they don't mention a damage number here, so I actually am curious if that means Hades damage will be the same, or because it's hard to, I don't know if Hades is kind of augmenting the regular damage of the bullpup machine gun, or if it's, just its own set damage value. So if it's its own set damage value, that means Hades is just totally buffed. If it is augmenting the original damage value, then it is going to be slightly nerfed while buffed in other regards. So yeah, overall this change insane to me. It seems like a buff. I know sometimes it can be just the tiny damage nerfs can be bigger than they seem. 3 damage per bullet. We talked about heavy arms getting like 4 damage per bullet and end up being a big change for them. So Pale Rider getting -3, maybe the same, but I feel like making these shots so consistent with more magazine size is going to mean more headshots and faster Hades and everything, with Hades being more accurate. I don't really know what they're thinking. I think Pale Rider is this kind of this blind spot for the dev team where they don't seem to realize how strong it is. So maybe I'll be eating my words and Pale Rider will feel a little bit weaker, but even if it is weaker, I'm thinking, yeah, a little bit weaker. I don't think that in any way this is a big nerf, if a nerf at all. And it's probably going to be a buff. So yeah, not so sure about this one. I think they're making a mistake here, making Pale Rider even more accurate at ranged, but we'll have to see how it plays out. So for our second to last change here, we have a buff coming for Gundam Dynames. They're saying its win rate and usage rate were both a little low, which does make sense. I feel like I've been seeing a lot of them lately, and when I do see them, they often struggle, so they decided to buff the pistols this time around, increasing the size of the bullets, making it easier to hit, and also increasing the base damage by 10. So not a huge buff. I do think it's fair, though. I think Dynames has been struggling a bit compared to GM Sniper, and I do think that most people don't use the pistols that often, and when you do, it doesn't really end up being that effective. I mean, people can definitely pull off stuff with it, but I still think the main strength does come with the sniper rifle. So a nice little buff there, I think, is fine, and you know, we'll have to see if it really does push Dynames forward much at all, but either way, I think this is a good change. And finally, our last change of the balance adjustments going to be for our latest suit, Susanowo. They said its usage rate and win rate are still high. That matches up with what I've seen, so they are applying a nerf. Last time, it was a nerf kind of with a buff at the same time. I think it equaled out to be a nerf, but not really much because it did get some buffs in exchange as well. So this one, straight up nerf. Beam Chakram is losing 30 damage, which means if you land both hits regularly, you're losing 60 damage, and if you land all four, that's, you know, 120, I guess would it be. Gotta do some quick maths in my head. So I do think Susanowo needed some sort of nerf. Its ability to just kind of mess with big grouped up teams and the ability to gain armor as long as it can secure one kill is very strong. This will hurt it a little bit. It's not really a huge change. I think if anything, this is going to hurt its ability to 1v1 a little bit more because your damage thresholds are going to be a little bit tighter. You might miss out on some kills that you normally would otherwise, but I don't think it's gonna make it a little bit more manageable when it lands those big multi-target hits. So I think this is an okay change. We'll have to see. I don't know if it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be enough to really push Susanowo out of the meta, but it will make them a little bit more manageable. So I'm in favor of it. So outside of the balance changes, we are of course also getting 2 new maps this season. Really looking forward to that. One Ironworks Domination map and Large Conveyance Facilities as a point capture map. We're also getting a few different events featuring some skins and access to additional capital, along with the new daily challenges, which means you can get capital every single day just for playing the game. As one final note regarding the Season Pass, it was alluded to before, but they are confirming that everyone is going to get the same Season Pass. There will be no Premium Season Pass this season, so all items and rewards will be available for free going forward with Season 6. So with that, we're all done with the Season 6 patch notes. A lot of cool stuff in here. Excited for the new suit and the new maps. Balance changes were a little off the wall this time. A couple ones in there I liked, but I think in general, a little worse than average, in my opinion, but still excited to see how things will play out in Season 6. It is a little bit bittersweet, knowing this is our last full season and our second to last season in general. But, you know, I'm still excited to what we have to play. It does look like a lot of fun stuff. So curious to hear what all of your guys' thoughts are. Are you still looking forward to everything that's coming with Season 6 now, especially that we have more capital and you'll be able to buy the newest suit or any of the other previous suits that you haven't gotten yet? So yeah, definitely let me know your thoughts. That is going to be it for me. Thanks again, everyone, for watching, and I'll see you all next time.